and welcome. I'm Deborah Guthrie, and joining me today is award-winning journalist Alexandra Illitch. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You probably remember Allie from her days at WLNS, former anchor, reporter for WLNS, and you probably remember her from her days here at HOMTV. Mm-hmm. You're a HOMTV alumni member.
Yes, I am. It's where it all started.
It's where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am so glad. I hate to see you leave the Lansing area. You were one of the few reporters, you and Ryan Schuling, who followed the Nassar case to a T, was on top of it from the beginning, it seemed like. When you left WLNS, I thought, we've lost our person, and Ryan left the area, you left the area, but then you launched an independent news channel that you own, you operate, you're still an investigative journalist, and so I'm so glad to see that you're still doing that, you're still in journalism, you're following these cases, and you're reporting to everyone.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's first talk about veracity.
Veracity, yes.
Veracity.
Yes.
I found you online. Where is Allie Illitch? What is she doing? Walk us through launching an independent news channel, so to speak, a website.
So I wanted to, as you know, when you have news organizations, unfortunately, they're downsizing. And so there's only so many resources that you can have. And so when I left WLNS, I was thinking, okay, I want to continue investigating these stories. I want to be able to devote my time to them. And not just MSU, but there's other things like the Catholic Church and just the state in general, some of the things that relate to the Nassar case. So I thought, okay, why don't I just launch my own website and start doing it that way, because I didn't want anything to hold me back. I wanted to be able to, I have so many stories to tell, and so I want to be able to tell them and to give a voice to people who haven't had a voice yet. So I just said, what the heck, why don't I just launch it, see what happens, continue to do the stories, continue to devote my time to investigating them so that they're thorough and accurate, and so I just did.
Explain to us, I think one of the hardest things for people to understand, and you touched on the downsizing, one of the hardest things for people at home to understand who are not in the news industry is just how hard it is to devote time to investigative journalism. Because you're trying to tell the news for the entire Lansing area. Can you talk about that a little bit and that transition you've decided to make to be able to devote time to it?
So it takes a lot of time. If you think about it, reports are released. They're 150 pages. How do you deliver immediate news to a community while at the same time being able to read the entire thing and writing down some of the key points? For me, it's really important. I think it's very important for people to get the full picture. Break down each point in this 150-page report that was released. And so in order to give justice to that, in order to allow the community to fully understand what may have went wrong or what was right about something, it takes, think about it. How much time does it take you to read through 150 pages of something? How much time does it take you to understand it and then write it all down so that someone else can understand it? So it takes hours and hours. And so I remember, like, when I was at WLNS, I was doing the day-to-day news and then at the same time digging into some of the investigative stories I was working on. I was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because you just have to stay on top of it. And then for me, I just love to do it. So I forget that, I have to just put it down for a minute and stop. So yeah, it takes a lot of time and energy and effort, and you have to make sure that you're reading thoroughly and you're writing down key points and comparing and contrasting perhaps statements that were made that may conflict with a report. So just things like that, which takes time.
Walk us through what a typical kind of day is for a news anchor. What was it like for you at WLNS while you were there?
I got up, I worked, ate, slept, and did it all over again.
Just like everybody else in their job, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was constantly on the go. Constantly on the go. I oftentimes explain it as like I was a hamster on a wheel, just constantly going. And of course, when you're on TV, you always have to be on.
You always
and
have to be on.
perfect. Right. And so that can be really hard because when you are extremely tired and you're trying to, you know, keep it all together and you're delivering the news, I mean, it's important to be poised and know what you're saying and be confident in what you're saying. And so the day-to-day was just, you know, get in. I would make a couple phone calls, maybe work on a story, and then on the weekends I was anchoring, but kind of that's where I took the time to investigate a lot of my stuff in between the shows. So always on the go, always doing something.
Now the township's having a press conference tomorrow on the investigative report that's being released. Will you be there?
Yes.
Okay, you'll be there. All
Yes.
right. So in your time, can you kind of give us a feel for some of the criticisms that people have? Because a lot of people talk about male, female reporters. Females are more criticized. The hair, the dress, the clothes, the makeup, all that kind of thing. Did you experience some of those types of things as a reporter as well and as an anchor?
I remember one time I received an email from someone who said that my hairdo was very outdated and from a long time ago. I don't remember specifically what the woman said, but I just thought, okay, thanks for watching. Yes, I think when television in and of itself, I mean, think about it. We watch TV and we look at the details of someone, what they're wearing, what they look like, how they sound. And so it can be challenging when, you know, you can't appeal to everyone. You kind of have to make sure that you are yourself, but you're also, you know, not doing anything that's distracting to people. I would say I only got that one criticism that one time, but I did see a lot of my coworkers. They would face some criticism based on their hair perhaps being curly or their makeup not being, you know, they look too pale or something to someone. And so people, yes, they get very brave behind their computer screens and they'll make comments. And I think that for women too, it is extra challenging because we have makeup and we have, you know, we have to style our hair and we have clothing that, you know, is different from a suit. So fortunately I didn't too much, but yeah, I mean, it happens a lot.
Have you seen it change over time in the field of journalism? Have you seen the style of dress change or the way in which female reporters and male reporters are approached with what they look like, their brand image? You know, we say brand image all the time now. We didn't used to say that before.
Right.
You know? Yes,
I do totally see a change. I think people now are feeling more empowered to maybe wear their hair natural. Or not wear makeup, or I think women more than men I'm seeing, but I definitely am seeing a change in a less conservative way of dressing. A lot of times I see, and myself as well, I took off the blazer, and I didn't wear a blazer anymore, but you probably know that for a long time, that's all women anchors would wear is a blazer.
I really didn't want to wear one today.
And you're wearing one today.
I really did not. I feel like taking it off right now.
But a blazer is okay. A blazer is okay,
Yeah.
but I guess, you know, just on the desk, it was like, will you wear a blazer?
Yes.
But definitely I've seen a change, and I've seen a change not only with the clothing, but also hair, makeup, things like that.
What do you say to someone, you know, and I've heard this around the office, I've heard this, and you've provided some training to some of our interns, and you've gone to classes at MSU and have talked. What is your advice to young girls or young female journalists who are getting into the industry in regards to, and we'll get to the journalism point of it too, but in regards to criticisms that they receive with how they look and that kind of thing? Because it can be harsh. Some people take it very personally. You know, you're trying to give some professional advice, and sometimes it could get a little too much of that. You know, there's a balance.
Right. Well, so for TV, right? You're talking.
Yeah.
So my advice would be, and I feel like in some ways a hypocrite saying this because I need to take this own advice, but just don't listen to them. I mean, sure, it's very important. You know, constructive criticism is something that I think is very important. It's important to get feedback from people, but when it's feedback like, I don't like the way you look, you know, you can't change the way you look.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, especially women, I think it's hard to receive that message, especially when you're trying really hard. I would just say, you know, read it, print it off, crumble it up, throw it out. Don't allow anyone to try to, you know, tell you you're not good enough or not pretty enough or, you know, they don't like your voice. I mean, use it as a motivator. Honestly, that's what I do. Whenever someone underestimates me or makes a comment that is harsh or rude, I just try to prove them wrong.
How did you get started in journalism?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I love to investigate things. I wanted to be a lawyer at first. So when I first came to Michigan State, I was majoring in criminal justice. Oh. So I don't know.
Do you know that's how I got started too?
Really?
Yeah, I really wanted. I wanted to get behind the minds of criminals, and I wanted to work in the prison system to try to figure out why they committed crimes and what made them do what they did, like serial killers and like real psychos and stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Like and then I don't even know how I got into, somehow I just chose communications, probably the easiest route at Michigan State or something. So that's interesting you say criminal justice. What, did you have a specific field or?
I just always like to, I don't know, I like crime. You know, just it fascinates me, much like you.
Yeah.
Why people do what they do.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And I also just like, I like law and justice. I mean, honestly, but I was always like, I'm not going to pass the bar. There's just no way. And I didn't want to be a police officer or a member of law enforcement. And I quickly found that with journalism, you can do both without having to go to law school or, you know, through some sort of police recruitment. So, yeah, I honestly don't know. But I'm glad that I found it because now it's like the best of both worlds.
And you sort of need a very inquisitive mind to be a journalist because you need to be able to look into things and ask questions and go behind the surface of stuff.
You have to be curious. It's important to be curious and not just take things as they are. Right.
At face, yeah.
Right.
So what are some of the most interesting stories or shocking stories that you've seen in your journalism career so far?
When I first started, I'll never forget this. There was a woman who told me that she had stage 4 cancer and she broke a world record. Well, long story short, come to find out she was lying about the entire thing. I went and interviewed her and we did a story. We aired a story. It was like 3 minutes long.
Oh my gosh.
And her daughter called the station afterwards and said, "That's my mom. She does not have cancer." So that was like right away. I was like, oh my gosh. You know, I really have to question everything.
Yeah, and look into everything.
Right.
Wow. What would compel her? Wow.
I don't know.
So that was the most shocking.
That was like the craziest, I think, thing that has happened to me. I guess the most shocking to me that I continue to see is that our criminal justice system is so incredibly broken. The things that happen, that some of the stories that I'm working on, I just scratch my head. I cannot believe the systems don't work as I thought they did. And the criminal justice system, I mean, a lot of things. I think that oftentimes people use personal biases to, you know, work in favor of a friend of theirs or someone that they know. And so I continue to see that, which motivates me because I think that that needs to change.
What are the biggest stories you're working on right now? Tell us a little bit about them.
So I continue to work on some of the Nassar stories coming out of Michigan State University, just because there are a lot of stories that kind of, you know, need to still be told related to that. I'm also working on some allegations of sexual abuse within the Catholic Church in this area and across the state that these individuals say went on for several years, and their complaints went ignored. So yeah, I continue to work really heavily on those two things, but I'm also working on a couple of other small cases involving this woman. She was charged with several crimes. Excuse me, and there's a lot of evidence and a lot of documents that kind of show that there's no way she could have been charged with X, Y, and Z. And so I just continue to work on those sort of things.
Okay. Where do you get your funding to operate your channel? I think that was your news organization. That was probably one of my biggest questions and I did see that people could donate or sponsor, or how does that work?
So right now I'm just doing this for free.
Okay.
I'm just totally, I wake up and I just work. And it's kind of funny because that's how I learned that I wanted to be in this business when I was here doing this for free. But I loved it, and I still do. I know that, I don't know, for me, it's not about the money. Obviously, people are like, Al, you have to get paid and blah, blah, blah. I mean, yes, but I know that if I continue to tell these stories and work hard enough, that comes after. So right now, I'm just using my money to do FOIAs, which is what I was doing before. And yeah, just seeing where it takes me.
How do people find you? It took me a little bit to find you online.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a Facebook and a Twitter. So there's a Veracity Facebook page. My Twitter is just at Alexandra Illitch. And then the website is veracitynews.online.
Now, did you put this all together while you were still at Channel 6?
No.
Okay.
After.
Okay. Did you know that this was something you wanted to do while you were at 6, or?
No, but I knew that I wanted to continue investigating the stories that I was working on. So it just kind of came to me, and I just took a leap of faith.
It almost seems like it's never ending with what's going on at MSU. Like, it just keeps unraveling and unraveling and unraveling.
It does.
Do you see an end to all of this unraveling at Michigan State through because you've been following this way more closely than I have? Do you see they've gotten everyone? They're all out now. You know what I mean?
So part of some of the stuff information that I have and the documents that I've been able to see, so speaking based on evidence that I've seen, there are still people that need to be held accountable. And so for as long as those individuals aren't held accountable, I think this story will continue to go on, because truth needs to be out there that, maybe someone did not have their hand in the pot as it relates to Nassar having to, or being suspended or being able to come back, or the new guidelines that he had to follow. And so it does seem like a never-ending tale, but I think it could come to an end if the right thing is done.
How do you handle, as a journalist, how do you handle those tough personal issues, especially we know you have to report on, maybe there's a homicide or a suicide or a family murder or something, or sexual assault, child sexual abuse. I mean, these are tough things to report on and to be poised in front of a camera. How do you handle those emotionally?
It's a good question. I honestly don't know. I compartmentalize a lot, but I guess what I do is I look at it and I say, as a consumer who's going to be receiving this information, I don't want to see someone crying when they're telling me. I just want to know what the facts are, and so that's what I try to focus on. That is not to say that I don't feel empathy and compassion when I talk to individuals or when I read stories that are tragic, but it's important to focus on facts, and it's important to kind of take your emotion out of it, because when people read it, they just want to know what the information is.
How important is it for society to have more female journalists and more diversity in journalism on our television sets or online or anywhere we're receiving the news?
I think it's very important because people relate to different people. Someone may relate to you because they are blonde and they, just relate to you right away. Someone might relate to me because they know I'm a certain ethnicity. I think that's really important because people naturally relate to one another, and they're more willing to listen when they know that there's some sort of relatable thing that they see in a person. And so I think it's really important that we have that diversity.
Do you see yourself as a female role model? Do you have young nieces and nephews and stuff like that? Do you see yourself as a role model for those youngsters in your family?
I think that we're all kind of role models in our own way, And so for me, I try to be someone who sets a good example and tries to do the right thing, and I try to serve as a person who, for the younger ones, because yes, I do have some younger cousins and nieces and nephews, and so yes, I try to be someone who they can look up to and say, she does the right thing, she stands up for what's right. So I'm far from perfect, but yes, I try to be.
Who was your role model growing up? Or few? Who was your few, or two or three?
I always just looked up to women who were powerful. To be honest with you, I can't think of one person. It always just fascinated me when I saw a woman who was, in a room with a bunch of men and who was well respected and, did amazing things for people. I'm sorry to say there isn't really one person. I don't know.
How important is female empowerment, do you think, in having those type of role models for young girls?
I think it's really important. It's very important for women to feel empowered. It's very important for women to feel like they can do something if they set their mind to it. And I think that having a mentor or a role model is also incredibly important, because having kind of a cheerleader there to help you along the way, to pick you up when you fall, will help someone like a woman to continue on the path to success and to be able to, overcome challenges and not let anyone bring them down or pull them away from their mission.
What recommendations do you have for any women out there who are listening who maybe want to own their own business and maybe fearful of taking that next step and taking that? What advice or words of encouragement would you give them?
You have nothing to lose. Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And I think that if you're passionate about something, you'll make it happen. If your passion will take you to where you want to be, if you stick to it and you have drive and you believe in yourself, you can do whatever you set your mind to.
Thank you, Allie.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you for watching. This is Allie Illitch. She's launched her own news organization, Veracity. Find her online, follow her on Twitter and on Facebook, and she's still doing investigative reporting. Excellent journalist. And as our township manager said about Allie Illitch, we had a little discussion about you. He had one word to say about Allie. This was his description: sharp. And that's exactly,
that's nice.
That's exactly what you are.
Thank
totally
you.
Sharp
Thank
on
you.
the money.
I appreciate that.
Always good to talk to you. Good to have you
too.
on.
Thanks.